I tell people all the time, if you're losing faith in the youth in this country and you're reading all that bad news, come to an event like that. You will never go someplace and hear as much yes sir, no sir, yes ma'am, no ma'am, polite, help each other out. When one of those kids needs something, help with their horse. Heaven forbid something happens to their horse, another kid will loan them a horse, and it really kind of renews my faith in the future.
Welcome to Beyond the Chutes. I'm Doug Simcox. This episode is made possible by Parasite System, helping vets help pets. Their technology, fecal sight, flow sight, and hemocyte brings clear, fast answers to animal diagnostics. It's smart, efficient, and built for today's veterinary teams. Learn more at parasitesystem.com. Here on Beyond the Chutes, we talk with the people who make rodeo what it is. Competitors, producers, legends, and everyone behind the scenes. These last few months has been busy for BTC. We've had the bus rolling. And in this episode, we traveled to the Festival des Westerns in St-Tite, Quebec, where the tradition continues. This year, celebrating 67 years of rodeo up there. We had an opportunity while we were there to sit down with IPRA President Dale Yerigan. We had great conversations about rodeo growth, about the rule changes that went into effect in 2025, about the IFYR and the youth program that they promote, and about the American, and about some new qualifiers that are being thought about and restructured. And we talked about the future of our sport. We hope you enjoy. Welcome to Beyond the Chutes. It's presented by Parasite Systems. We are in St-Tite, Quebec. We are at the 57th Annual Western Festival des St-Tite. Sam, we've been rolling up here.
Yes, we have, Doug, and hope everything's working good and rolling right along.
So far, so good.
Yeah, as long as everything, it's been a good week.
It's been a good week. Let's keep it rolling, right? Let's keep it rolling. The tradition continues this year, Mr. Yerigan. The tradition continues. Every year we put you on the sofa, right? And first off, welcome, Dale.
Thank you.
President of, General Manager of the International Professional Rodeo Association and of IPRA Canada as well. We got to throw that in there. So, like always, tell us a little bit about what's going on, kind of the state of rodeo from the International Professional Rodeo Association standpoint.
Well, kind of, I sound like a re-recording, I guess, of last year. But there's a lot of interest in rodeo and the Western way of life now. And so it's been a great year. Fans are up, spectators good everywhere that I talk to committees and producers. A rare exception once in a while, an outdoor event affected by weather. But other than that, attendance has been up everywhere. We've still, I don't know, last year we were at 655 rodeos with co-sanctions and everything. And we'll be pretty close to that this year. It'll vary a little bit, but and people, now that the Yellowstone has kind of died off a little bit.
Yeah.
I know they're supposed to be coming back with a spin-off of it and stuff, but and I don't say that Hollywood and all of that doesn't have anything to do. The three of us are all old enough to remember the urban cowboy days, right? And we saw uptick in interest in rodeo and stuff. But I think this time, even more so than then, it goes way beyond the Hollywood part of it, because I think, we're north of the border now, but I think here and in the U.S. certainly, there's a lot of interest in family-friendly, affordable, pay tribute to God and country, and despite what you might hear on certain news channels, I think there's real appetite for that.
Yeah. And
I think people are kind of gravitating toward that. They like the frontier spirit, and I think it's got a chance to really continue for a long time. The interest in rodeo and all that goes with it, the Western culture and lifestyle, and it doesn't matter if you live north, south, east, or west. I think there's a real appetite for it.
And a young competitor coming into rodeo. You got Breakaway roping now for the Cowgirls. I love that event. Talk a little bit about bringing that on. You're the first association to really formally bring that on.
Well, and there was some, of course, youth rodeos had it up through college, so it's been popular for a long time in those, in youth rodeo and high school and up through college. And then most of the time they didn't really have anywhere to go beyond that. Some state and regional associations started doing it, because to keep the whole family involved and all of that. And so, Dakota Missildine, now Dakota Johnson, she was the first breakaway roping director, and she's a former Miss Rodeo USA. So she was a big proponent of breakaway roping, and came to me, and we had multiple conversations about it. And she really spearheaded the effort, and I told her and our board right from the beginning when we started having the discussions about it, I'm all for it. I didn't want them to think I was against the event. But I didn't want to, as far as having it at the IFR and all of that, I didn't want to take prize money away from the other events to fund it. I felt like that was, not a good message. And so she, worked hard. We gathered up a little more sponsor money. The first couple of years, the girls roped for less money than the other events, but they were willing to have it. We still, crowned a world champion, buckles, saddles, all the prizes were the same, but the added money was less. And then, in a few years' time, with the growth of the membership and, in that discipline and stuff, and moving to the Lazy E was an advantage to have it because we were able to reduce our costs going there and some of those things. And so ever since then, we've had equal money for them as well, which it should be. I never wanted to start with less. The funding just wasn't there to begin with. But and it couldn't happen fast enough for some of them. But I think it was a relatively short amount of time before we got them on the level playing field.
You bet. And of these 655 rodeos that sanctioned last year, all of them offer breakaway?
Almost all of them. There's a few exceptions. It wasn't a mandatory event when we started, but it showed there was, again, an appetite for that because in a short amount of time, without it being a mandatory event, I think the last year that it wasn't a standard event, so to speak, that like 83 or 85% of the rodeos offered it. And then we do have a few, less than full rodeos, a Bulls and Broncs competition, those type of things. And, of course, They don't have it. But they also maybe don't have steer wrestling. Or a lot of them will have Bulls, Broncs, and barrels maybe, to have that mixed in with it. But yeah, it's there's very, very few. I can't say that every one of them has it. There was a committee that, I know last year when I talked to them, they didn't have it in their budget to add that because it's the prize money, but there's also the expense of the cattle and, those things. But they made a commitment to work hard to, for next year to make sure that they were able to include it. So
you bet. And what have you seen as far as attracting contestants? The numbers going up in the breakaway side?
Well, they are, but it affects other events too. And I felt like it would, but, I don't have a crystal ball, so it was a bit of a guess on my part. But, rodeo is a very family-oriented thing, both spectator-wise, but also the competing side of it. And I think that, barrel racing, I've been married to a barrel racer for a long time. Love barrel racing, but it's so much about the horse. Not that the other events aren't, and barrel horses are so expensive now. Everything's expensive, right? Everything's gone up. But a good barrel horse is so expensive, and the barrel racing is so tough and tight on the competition. And you can take the very best rider and put them on a mediocre or lesser horse, and they're not going to win in the barrel racing.
Right.
Where the breakaway roping, it's certainly competitive and tough, and you'll look at times sometimes where 1-8 wins first and 2-2 wins sixth, right? They're just stacked in there, tight. There's a lot of these girls can really rope, but the ones that really work on their roping and can reach a little further and handle their rope better, they might ride a a little more mediocre horse and still be able to win because of their skill to, be able to handle a rope. Where, so it kind of opens it up a little more, rewards the practice and all that. And I don't want to take away from the barrel racers that they're not working hard at it and stuff. But, again, if you don't have that, and rodeo is, gotten so tough that you got to have that, really special horse. And it allows other people in other events in the family. It's a husband, a boyfriend, a dad, a brother, a sister, whatever that works another event that they all want to go because the one in the family that Breakaway ropes gives them a chance to go and compete as well.
We're seeing that. We saw that. Tyler Waltz, right?
For sure.
World champion bareback rider, IPRA. His wife's out roping hard, going hard. He breaks out his Yerigan, and it's time to go again. Love to see it.
I ran into Tyler and Bree in the street before I came to see you. Just hadn't seen him for a while, and I saw he's been entering a little bit here and there, and I was teasing him about not being entered here, and he said, I'm working back into it, maybe next year, but she's entered in the Breakaway, and yeah, exactly, and Tyler, I didn't ask him, I wouldn't be surprised if we see him even after the bareback riding's, done, see him show up somewhere and rope steers or steer wrestle. He's bulldog some, and I think he still loves rodeo, and it gives him and Bree a chance to travel together.
You bet. So with bringing in now 2 events for the Cowgirls, possible that we could see an all-around world championship won by one of these rodeo lady competitors?
Well, it is possible. Like Justin Thigpen, for instance, has been pretty dominant other than when he's been hurt the last few years because he can work, all the timed events that are available for guys. And I don't know if he could ride a bronc if you paid him enough money, but he's been great in the tie down, the team rope, and the steer wrestling and all those things. So he's been hard to beat, but I think it's certainly possible. You get the right girl on the right horse. What's the girl she lives in Kentucky now. She married the bronc rider, Taylor. I'm drawing a blank on her last name. I apologize to her.
Yeah.
But a few years ago, when we first started having Breakaway roping, and before it was equal money at the IFR, she went in really high in the standings in both the barrel racing and the Breakaway roping, and was up there pretty high in the all-around standings. I think it's certainly possible.
Well, that'd be something. I mean, the IPRA's always been about making history. So that'd be kind of cool, wouldn't it?
Yeah, I think, we were one of the first ones, if not the first ones, to have a woman finish in the all-around standings and stuff. Darlene Fletcher, Mike's wife, years ago, she would team rope some, and there's been a few others that have won money in another event and stuff. But now with the Breakaway roping, that it's 2 specialized events for them, and there's some great cowgirls out there. I don't know if anybody will ever win the World All-Around Championship, but they'll certainly contend for it and be in the standings.
Love it.
Could you imagine back in the day when Charmaine James wore the #1 back number at the NFR?
Yeah.
If there was Breakaway roping.
Just give her, all you got to do is win a few dollars in Breakaway.
Well,
and
she's a cowgirl, I'm sure.
Yeah.
A horsewoman beyond belief. So could you imagine what that would have done? But that's, neither here nor there. It didn't happen. But I could foresee it happen because there's so many good riders out there that work both events very well.
You bet. And Calgary brought it on this year, so I'm hoping it becomes more mainstream. I'd love to see it. It's such a fast-moving, never a dull moment kind of event.
It really is, and I think that, again, going back to the fans and the spectator side of it, I think they like to see women compete, and I think that, even though they're not getting off and tying them down like the men are, I think they have an appreciation for those girls that can handle a rope like that and rope that quick and be that good at it. And Taylor Hanchey, Shane Hanchey's wife, she's been to the NFR in the breakaway roping and the barrel racing, but different years. There's a cowgirl right there that, now they're raising a family and stuff. I don't know how much she intends to go, but somebody like that's that talented in both events, if she got the right barrel horse and the right rope horse going at the same time, she could, they don't do it that way because the WPRA is kind of a separate thing. But I mean,
right.
Someone of her caliber could certainly contend for an all-around in the IPRA, or if the PRC and the WPRA ever decided to allow those points to count.
You bet. You bet. And some new rules came in this year. And I'll let Sam kind of take over on this with you in conversation. First off, the markout rule got changed. That goes away, so no longer are you disqualified. Interested in how that's going. And then, of course, changes in the calf roping. So what's that been like this year?
Well, so I think it's been great. And so I'm the one that proposed the rule, right? So I'm going to support it. But the reality is, or here's my thoughts and sort of philosophy on it, and why I proposed it the way it's written. So right away, there was some pushback. Of course, the social media, the keyboard warriors get out there and take a cut at you. But, they said they're doing away with the markout rule. Well, that's not what happened. It's just not a disqualification. If you look in the rule book, it still says that you should mark them out, gives the description of what that is and all of that. But it's just not a disqualification. So my thought is a couple things. And I don't care what level you're at, who's judging the rodeo. I think it's one of the most inconsistent calls and rules in rodeo. We can all... Rodeo's on TV more than it ever was. You can sit there and watch rodeos on the Cowboy channel or wherever you're going to watch it. And streaming, they're streaming all kinds of events now. And you'll see that it was plainly the wrong call. And I don't think there's a single judge out there that's deliberately cheating anybody or that wants to be wrong. And, the NFR instituted a replay last year. We've had it for a couple of years at the IFYR. But even then, it's not foolproof. Sometimes, something still gets missed, but it's so I think that was one real issue with it. And then the other thing, Sam can speak to this way more than me because I've been on absolutely zero barebacks and saddle broncs in my career, but I've watched a ton of it and studied rodeo for a long time. The horse that stands there flat-footed and just leaves the chute kind of smooth and, all in one motion. Anybody with any skill can mark that horse out easily. It's almost a foregone conclusion. But then you got one that rears up, stands on his back feet, jumps out of there, and then just falls out of the sky and really jobs his feet in the ground. It's hard to hold your feet in the neck. If he misses his a half inch, he's zero, and the other guy, I think all that can be part of it. So the first time a few years ago, we had a 5-point deduction on either side if they missed them out. And it was only in place for a year. And while I think it was still better than a zero, as I thought about it more, had discussions with Steve Ratchford, our judging commissioner, and other people, it didn't allow for that because, like I said, you got this guy. He had one that was really hard to mark out, and he got the same deduction as if a guy, whatever happened, he was just getting started, a little bit inexperienced yet, somebody just leaves there in the belly, they got the same deduction as the guy that missed one a half an inch or an inch on a very difficult animal. So I like it now where it's just part of the 25 points you can award. And so you can take all that into consideration. You can take in we're grading the ride partly on how difficult the animal is to ride out in the arena. Why can't the mark out also be part of that? And, some of the people were, so they're going to win. They're going to leave there in the belly and win. The only time somebody leaves there in the belly or doesn't make any attempt to mark the animal out and win something is if the rodeo's scheduled to pay 4 places and there's only 3 scores. So a lot of times, not every time, but usually that's a young guy trying to get a start that just left there way out of position. Well, so yeah, the guy that won first, it cost him a few bucks, but maybe that kid that's getting started that won fourth and won him $200 or $300, maybe that encouraged him and he came back and it got him, to go the next week and stuff and gave him a little bit of sense of accomplishment. And in the horse riding, I think the whole industry struggles for entries and up and comers. And so I think it's been a good thing. You can watch, the NFR, for instance, they had the instant replay last year for the first time, but, we've watched it for years, and all those camera angles and all that stuff. I mean, again, I'm not trying to pile on the judges because I don't think it was intentional, but they have flat missed some and cost people not only a lot of money, quite possibly world championships. And so I think this is a better situation.
And I agree. It's such a judgment call. At first, I was dead set against it. No, you mark your horse out. I probably didn't miss out 5 horses in my life, but that was my routine. I had a strong mark out. But there are so many people that have lost a lot because of it. And it's just a judgment call. And I think it's great. And I don't know about deductions. I think it should, if you're not going to do it, you don't do it, and that's okay. And it will be fantastic for horses bad in the box. You get one that's squatting down in there, and you can't get a good seat, you can't do nothing, and rather than take a smash, and you might nod your head and not have to mark them out and go. Especially them old smart ones that know.
Yeah.
So I'm all for it now, and I wasn't at first, but now that you see how many mistakes they really make, because you always knew they were.
Yeah.
But now you got proof. And, yeah, like you said, nothing on purpose. It's just the way it is.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. So the other rule you put in place has to do with the tie-down calf roping. Talk a little bit about that, if you would, and kind of the intention of this rule.
Yeah, so instead of the way it's traditionally been, in the IPRA, after the contestant completed the run, remounted their horse and rode up and gave slack in the rope, it was a 5-second runoff. The flag judge had a stopwatch and ran off 5 seconds. The calf had to stay tied for 5 seconds before they untie him and call the run good. In the PRCA, it's 6 seconds. And so it had been that way forever. And we actually started doing something similar up here in Canada a few years ago, and it's worked well. There's some more things in place up here, but as far as in the U.S. and at all the IPRA rodeos, now instead of that being remounting and ride up and then the time starts, after the contestant completes the run, signals for time and stands up and is clear of the calf, when he starts back to his horse, the judge will start the time, and it's just 3 seconds. And so, we know, and inside rodeo people know, that it is not harming that calf to have his legs crossed and tied. I mean, it's done. I mean, they're built that way. You can cross their legs and they're, it really isn't causing any harm to the animal. Right. They do it in the wheat pastures and places to doctor cattle and all those things. But to people that don't know anything, about cattle and we're in the entertainment business, right? I mean, it's a sport, it's competition at the highest level. And it fits all the descriptions of what sport is as far as the competition part of it, but we're also in the entertainment business, and we're trying to entertain fans and a broader audience, and we have more people than ever coming to rodeos because of the renewed interest in it. So to people that don't understand the way animals are built and the thickness of their hide and all of those things, they see what they think is a baby cow, and they either think it's sort of a bondage type thing that the animal's laying out there tied, or if the calf does try to stand up and they get to kind of twist it around, they don't understand, and they think that we're harming the animal. So it's still who can get out of the barrier and rope them and tie them the fastest. I don't think we took away from the competition and the basic parameters, the competition of what tie down roping is, but it made it more fan friendly and more appealing, and I don't think that's a bad thing either. And again, pushback, especially from, I consider myself a traditionalist. Like I love the tradition and history of rodeo, and I always want to pay respect and tribute to that. But most things in life, if you don't have some adaptation as you go along, At one time they rode broncs for 10 seconds. Why'd they change it to 8 seconds? I don't know, but, it's not the mark out rule itself. It's my understanding, the little bit, or, what I know about the history, like bareback riding, mark out, that wasn't a thing when they first started that event, and then it came into play somewhere. But the tie-down roping thing, I think that, if we can adapt something, still keep the competition, as it is, and not change the, what it's really all about, and make it a more fan-friendly event, that, I think that's a good thing.
That's absolutely a good thing. And the rule be in place 2026, both those rules?
Yes, we went through in IPRA, any member can submit a rule change, and they have to be in by the end of July. We had, a couple weeks ago, we had our board meeting. The board goes through them the first time, usually late August, early September, and then whichever ones make the cut there and get passed by the board, then they go out to the membership. So they're currently out in front of the membership now, and then in October we'll have another meeting to finalize them for the 26th season. And no rules were proposed dealing with those two things, so they'll still be in place next year. And either somebody forgot to send in a new one that didn't like it, or people have adapted and realized. I had some interesting conversations last spring. The Art Conference, Association of Rodeo Committees, I was asked to join a few years ago, and it's been really good to go, and a few times I've been asked to speak, just to tell them about the IPRA, because it's mostly made up of large PRCA committees, not all of them, but for the majority of them that are part of that organization. And they've reached out and want to start trying to include some IPRA committees and invite them. But so we're actually working on that. They'll probably come to the IFYR this year and invite IPRA committees to start joining ART. But when I gave a little update on the IPRA this year at Fort Worth, is where the conference was this year, I mentioned those things about the two new rules, and then they had a little mixer meet and greet right after that session. And I don't know. I mean, it wasn't 100, but it was probably half a dozen large rodeo committees that came and asked me some questions and stuff about both those rules. And, they're interested in doing that. And one of them is even involved with the leadership in the PRCA, said they have some legislation pending with some similar stuff. Now, what happens there, I don't know, but they're it's starting to be some push forward other places, and some big rodeos have done some of those things. Calgary has done some similar things. Houston some years has done some similar things, and there's some others, but I think that maybe we'll be on the front end of it instead of the back end, and maybe some others will wake up and see that maybe there is a better way to do some of this stuff.
And that's the thing that's always impressed me about the IPRA. You guys have been on the leading edge, whether it's health insurance for your members, Miss Rodeo USA, the first association to have Cowgirl barrel racing as part of your committees and such. You've led, and I really like that. To replay, I mean, these rules, I think, congratulations on that. That's really strong.
Well, thanks. And, replay is, who would have thought rodeo that would have even ever been an option? And unfortunately, it's not an option everywhere, because most places don't have the infrastructure and the video and the camera angles and all of that. But when we had an opportunity to put it in place at the IFR, again, those judges want to get the call right. I don't think that any of the judges we've had at the IFR are intimidated by it or against it or anything like that. If somebody challenges a call, and to their credit, last January, we had 0 challenges. The year before, we had a few. One of them that was challenged wasn't a challengeable, offense or incident, So that was taken care of by what the contestant was trying to challenge, because it was a bit of even though we had the printed ground rules and all that, and everybody got a copy, he thought it was challengeable, and it wasn't. But there were very few challenges the first year, and there was 0 this last year. And that's not to say that the 4 judges are perfect and not human, but it's not like this is just going to hold up the rodeo and cause a big ruckus. Sam and I were talking a little yesterday about the PBR's had challenge for a while now. They're in a different situation with a single discipline thing, and they have their own production crew that they move everywhere and take with them, and TV and all that. But, they've made it a fan-friendly thing, right? They involve the fans, and they're showing it back on the board, and the commentators are talking about, now right here, and they're running the clock, if it's a buck-off challenge or something, and they're slowing it down frame by frame, and that guy's hand, is it in the rope? Is he touching this or that? And I think the fans want to see the right call, obviously, also, and I wish we could do it more places, and maybe that day will come.
Yeah. One year I was sitting at home and Dalen was in one of the $100,000 if you rode all your bulls, you got your last cowboy standing, I guess it was. And his bull hit the chute, his head hit the chute. Wasn't real hard. And I'm just yelling, throwing money at the TV, hit that button, hit that button. Yeah. And when he got home, I said, how come you didn't hit the button? He said, I didn't know it happened. And I can definitely see that. I said, well, get you a buddy that can see that and hit that button. I said, I was throwing money at the TV, and oh my goodness, because there's 100,000 on the line, and he was like in the top 6 or 8 coming back. So there was only them left,
that we can contest it. I love that. Absolutely.
And they don't always agree with the replay judge, but it's as fair as I think you can possibly make it at this point in time.
You bet.
And even with all the camera angles and stuff that you have, there's still some times when something isn't, and so then at least in the IPRA, and I think it's the same way at the NFR or the PBR. If it's not indisputable evidence, then it goes to the call originally made, right? I mean, if the judge says he slapped him, and they, with all the camera angles, they can't determine whether he did or not. You go back to the judge's call, and that's what the first year at the IFR that we had it. There was a mark out challenge. The judge threw the flag. The contestant challenged it, and you prepare for everything and everything else. And they had the replay, but, don't ask me why, but for some reason, even with all the technology, right as the contestant, when you needed to determine that and make the call, it blurred right there where his foot and the horse's kind of neck and shoulder were. And when you slowed it down, I mean, it distorted it enough that you couldn't tell exactly where his spur was. So I know the contestant didn't like that, but that's, unfortunately what happened. And so the call on the field or in the arena stood, and he was no score, missed him out. But
so it's mid-September. Talk a little bit about the IFR coming up this next January, back at the Lazy E. How are the plans coming together for that?
Good. For those that were maybe there last year or have even seen some of the advertisements or social media stuff about the Lazy facility itself, they're doing a lot of work there. They've added some horse barns, and they're building an event center right next to the main arena, and we were hopeful that it was going to be ready to go in January, and I found out a couple of weeks ago that it won't be completed, but the IFR is still going to go on as it has in the main arena there. And then by next year, what it'll do for the IFR is open up some more trade show space and some things like that. Okay. And we can maybe have some additional events out there, go around buckle presentation, some of that, so people don't have to travel back to the hotel for those and some of those things. But and they're going to continue to make improvements around there with additional stock pens and all those things. But progress is slow sometimes, and you got to go through some growing pains. But they're getting ready they're going to host the National Junior High Finals is moving there in 26, and I believe they signed a 10-year agreement with them. So that's a huge event, just numbers wise, the amount of kids that come to that. And so they're going to continue to grow and expand there as well. And the other events they have that, they've increased their business a lot in the last 5 or 10 years and brought in some more major events. And a lot of them are barrel racing and team roping events where it's not so much spectators. but they need the extra barn space and trade show space and all those things. So they continue to work on that. The Gold Buckle Gala on Wednesday night, the night before the rodeo starts. Last year, we hadn't been at the Cowboy Hall of Fame in years for that event, but we went back there last year, and we'll go back again this year.
Nice.
And it's a great place to have it. You know, that facility is pretty phenomenal, and it was a big hit last year to go there. So we look forward to going back there.
Great. Excellent. And big events, IFYR, July. Talk to us a little bit about, was that the 26th, 27th year?
You caught me off guard. 27 or 8, I think.
Okay. Yeah.
It really is. I mean, National High School is a great event. I mean, that's how I got started in rodeo, was high school rodeo and stuff, and they've made some changes at National High School Rodeo where now there is some money for those kids to win. You know, for years it was, you know, it was about scholarships and buckles and saddles and the awards, but now there is money involved there. They have prize money and all of that. The IFYR has from the beginning, and it is really, you know, this year I think we had 855 kids, 14 to 19-year-olds. The competition was great. The weather in Shawnee, Oklahoma in July can be a little warm, and it was hot, but it wasn't. We really had an ideal year weather-wise. It rained around there in different places because it's an outdoor event in front of a large grandstand, but the arena was never muddy. We never got, you know, 10 miles down the road they got flooded and it kind of went around us, and it was slightly cooler than normal and stuff, but it was a great event. I tell people all the time, if you're losing faith in the youth in this country and you're reading all that bad news and hearing all these, come to an event like that, and is there a knucklehead that does something, you know, foolish once in a while? Sure, they're kids, right? But you will never go someplace and hear, you know, as much yes sir, no sir, yes ma'am, no ma'am, polite, help each other out. When one of those kids needs something, help with their horse. Heaven forbid something happens to their horse, another kid will loan them a horse, and it really kind of renews my faith in the future.
Absolutely. And speaking of this, you know, loaning horses and all that, you've got a lot of kids come over from Australia, New Zealand. They don't bring their horses with them. They're getting mounted up when they get here.
Yeah, and one of the and there's other avenues for them, but we have a youth director program there. Each year there's 6 youth directors. So we run 3 arenas simultaneously, and so there's 2 youth directors in each arena for a go between, you know, one of their jobs, among other things, is to, if somebody has an issue or doesn't understand a call that's made, you know, that contestant doesn't go talk to the judge, because the rodeo keeps going. You got to keep the flow going. They go to their youth director and say, hey, you know, I don't understand why this or that, or, you know, whatever it might be. And then the youth director will just tell the judge, and then we'll meet in the secretary's office. We've got an area to meet in there after the rodeo, and they can talk to the judge and have a discussion. The judge can explain what he saw, why he made the call that he made, and so on and so forth. But anyway, those youth directors, there's some adult directors that head that program up, and so Christy and Brian Jones and Kurt and Renee Underwood have been involved for a long time, and Kurt and Renee's barrel racer, has a daughter that's a barrel racer and been involved in rodeo for a long time, and they've been a good resource. They try to really help those kids if they're coming from another country and they don't have other resources to find a horse to ride and stuff. They've helped them out. You know, they've leased horses of their own sometimes, and it's pretty cool to see them come, really make it an international event. You know, and that, you know, and some of them come because they have high school rodeo over there like in Australia. And so some of them come and they go to Shawnee to the IFYR and then stay over and go to the National High School Finals if they've qualified for it. And what a great experience for those kids. And it's great for us and the, you know, the people on this side of the big pond to get to interact with them and stuff. And it's pretty neat.
And I believe a record was set this year in the bronc riding.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure on this, so somebody will correct me if I'm wrong. I think we had our first champion from outside the U.S. There was an Australian saddle bronc rider that won the IFYR championship, and I'm pretty sure that's the first one from outside the U.S. that's won the championship there.
Yep. It's Cade Ferguson.
Yeah.
Comes from Australia. We had him on the show. Kylie Ferguson, she's a sponsor, brings him over. She's been great to get to know and shared a lot of stories of adventures and so forth. So congratulations to Cade and congratulations. I mean, it's truly International Finals Youth Rodeo.
It is. They added this year was the first time they gave go-round buckles also for the first and second go-round winners there at Shawnee. And so we did it at the end of the first round, Tuesday night when it was over. We did a little buckle presentation there after the performance. Brought a trailer into one of the arenas, and him and Colt Bass from North Carolina split the first round in the bronc riding. And so they were both going to get a buckle, but obviously we only have one on hand. And so we flipped forward, and Colt won the flip. And they were walking off, and I thought, boy, that wasn't very smart. I should have asked Colt if he would let, because otherwise we're going to have to ship a buckle to Australia, right?
Right.
So my pea brain kicked in, and so I ran him down, and Colt was very gracious about it. And then it just kind of ironically, I guess, Cade ended up winning the bronc riding and winning the championship, but Colt won the all-around and won a saddle and buckle for that, as well as the use of a trailer for a year and stuff. So it all kind of, they both left there happy and with lots of prizes, and Colt's got his buckle now, too, as well for splitting the first go-around.
Yeah, excellent. And good job with that, by the way.
And it was just another one of those examples, like, there's a kid like, I'm sure he wanted that buckle too, but he understood when I explained to him. He's like, yeah, I get it, no problem. Just let him take that one, and he can take it with him to Australia, and it'll be easier for everybody, and very gracious about it.
You bet. All right, we're sitting in the St-Tite recording studio here at the Western Festival de St-Tite. So let's shift and let's talk a little bit about this rodeo. You began competing here years and years and years ago, so you got a lot of history here. And this will branch into a little bit, too, if you would, Dale, talk a little bit about IPRA Canada. Last week was the Canadian Cup. You've been involved in this all the way through. You played golf today. How'd you do?
Not well. BJ and I lost to Sylvan and Dustin Thompson, but, it wasn't for big money or anything, but, oh well.
You still lost. When you lose, you lose.
Yeah.
That's no good.
And to those two, right?
Yeah. Now I'm going to have to hear about that.
I think so. So, talk a little bit about the rodeo, what you've seen this year, and what's going on in Canada.
Well, I lose track of how many years ago it was when this rodeo was really the catalyst for it, because they'd had a rodeo here since the 1960s, and it had grown and grown, and then the IPRA got involved with some co-sanctioning up here and stuff that allowed our members to come up and gain points and stuff. And then as the rodeo grew more and more prize money, we worked with the stock contractors up here to expand and do more than just this one rodeo. And so now BJ Prince, Rawhide, that mostly in Ontario, does a few in Quebec. I don't know how many rodeos he had this year. His numbers have went way up. He's a busy busy guy putting on lots of rodeos, plus his two little girls trying the junior rodeo and junior high rodeo and stuff. And then Sylvain Bourgeois with Wild Time here in Quebec, and then Joey Tardif, ERQ, also in Quebec. All of their rodeos are IPRA and part of IPRA Canada, but also part of IPRA World, if you will, and those points count toward the IFR as well as in our world standings, as well as to get to come to, we have a IPRA Canadian Finals that all the rodeos in Canada count toward. It's actually in the spring. It's a little bit odd. So the 2025 IPRA Canada Finals won't be until like late May, early June 2026. And it's here at St-Tite also.
Yeah.
It's really worked out well. They had it a couple other places when we first started that. And then the opportunity came. They wanted to create another event here at St-Tite, and I think that they kind of use it as a ticket launch and kickoff for the for the festival and everything that goes with it. And so it's worked well. And it's grown each year, and it's a great opportunity for the contestants. And so with all of that and the cooperation with those three producers and stuff, we've grown to about 50 events and 400 or 500 members up here. And they have the option, if they're a Canadian citizen, they can buy a full IPRA card, full membership that counts points toward the IFYR and World Championships and all those things. But if they're just going to rodeo in Canada and they don't want to go to the U.S. and don't want to try to qualify for the IFYR, they can buy an IPRA Canada card, Canadian membership. The big difference is because of it has a different insurance plan because of the national health care they have up here. So it's slightly less cost because we're not paying the same insurance premium on them. There's still a little bit of insurance that goes with it because I'm not an expert on Canadian health care, but there's some things that aren't covered, maybe some of the ambulance costs and some of those things, even with their national program. But anyway, so if they want to just rodeo in Canada, they can buy that Canadian membership. They can qualify for the Canada Cup last weekend, as well as St-Tite, the big rodeo, I'll call it, here at the festival. It's also a qualification process. It's not unlimited entries. And then they can qualify for the IPRA Canada Finals and win that Canadian title on that card. And so it gives them some options, and it's really went well.
And last year was the first year. We'll shift to the American Rodeo, which is held in Fort Worth, I think June this coming year, if I'm not mistaken, in 2026. But for the first time last year, 2024, this rodeo was a super qualifier, which meant for the American. So you win this rodeo, you win the bronc riding here, you automatically get a bye, you get a qualification into the Eastern Region qualifier in Lexington, Kentucky, and you go all the way to the short round night, so you bypass all those other qualifying rounds, and it can be a number of rounds to get you qualified. Talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, and so, when Teton Ridge, took over the American, bought it and acquired it, they were doing some different things than the way it originally started, and had some ideas about qualifying and the best way to give more people the opportunity to try to qualify and stuff. And the other thing that they did was those region qualifiers that they're having at Lexington, Kentucky, Las Vegas, and then last year it was in Tulsa, that central region. This year it'll move to Oklahoma City. 2 years ago they had it in Oklahoma City, but they put a lot more money into that as well. And so it's not the $1 million bonus that the American is, but I think those events, that if you won an event, besides what you might have won in some go-rounds, I think it paid $14,000 or $15,000 to win those region qualifiers.
Right.
So pretty substantial money. And so this one, as you said, it's a super contender or super qualifier, so they get to go right on to the short round. But we did a couple with them last year, but it was really last minute, and we didn't get the word out very good. So I actually had a meeting with them again this week, and we're going to do some stuff within the IPRA to get more people qualified to go to Lexington in that East region. Our strength is in the East. A majority of our rodeos are in the eastern half of the U.S. And so at the end of this month, Harrison, Arkansas, an IPRA rodeo will be not a super contender, but it'll be a qualifier for Lexington. So you can go to Harrison and nominate it and get a spot at Lexington. We're going to do probably a couple more in October. We'll probably do a couple a month from now until those region tournaments in the spring. I think they're in April this next year. And the Quarter Horse Congress that we're involved with the Ohio Quarter Horse Association, huge, quarter horse event. We started a co-sanction agreement with them a few years ago to sanction the open breakaway, team roping, and tie-down roping there at the Congress. And so I connected Teton with the people at the American, with the Quarter Horse Congress people. Nice. And so those three disciplines will be qualifiers as well for Lexington. Again, more opportunity, and I think what the IPRA can sort of offer, instead of just having a bunch of jackpot competitions and stuff to qualify, that's fine. I mean, it's worked, and I think they're still doing some of that where somebody might have a steer wrestling or a team roping or a tie-down roping or whatever that's a qualifier, but working with a sanctioning organization like us, because they have to verify all those results, because if you get a time or a score, you get points and stuff. Well, a lot of times events might publish their results, but they only publish the winners, right? The ones that win money. But they need to know if it paid 6 monies, they might need to know somebody further down the list that was 10th or 15th. Did they get a time or a score? Because there's points involved in that, if they nominated. So it can go beyond what we're used to seeing in just the payoff. So we get complete results for IPRA events, obviously, in the office, all the secretary recordings of all the time scores and all those things. So we can help facilitate that. So I think it makes it a little easier for them. And you've got a sort of a central clearinghouse with, a rule book and all those things. So hopefully I don't want to say that they've lacked integrity, but I think it just a little easier way to make sure there's certain standards upheld and stuff, and you have judges and secretaries there that are certified and all those things.
So what does it mean to nominate a rodeo?
So like Harrison coming up the end of this month, you can just enter Harrison, Arkansas the same way you would. As an IPRA member, it's co-sanctioned with the ACRA and some other things. Or a non-member can enter it, because they take locals or non-members at that rodeo. So you can just go compete for the prize money at that rodeo. But then it being an American qualifier, they just have a QR code now. Technology's come far enough along. You can do it ahead of time through their website and their outlets, or you can, when you get to the rodeo, before you compete, when you're checking in with the secretary, she'll have a QR code there. You can scan that with your phone, pay a nomination fee, and then if you want it to count as a qualifier for the American, and then if you get points there, might be the fast track to Lexington to get a chance there. So again, pretty simple process, and it's a choice thing, right? You're not forcing it on them. You're not saying we're tacking this on your entry fee and everybody has to pay it. It's an optional thing. Anybody that goes there and competes can choose whether or not they want to make it a qualifier.
Yeah, and a lot of times I'll say, okay, what advice do you have, Dale, for somebody coming into rodeo? I'm going to set it up a little bit different this time. Go back 30 years, but in today's world, what's Dale Yerigan going to do? What's he going to focus on in competition? How are you going to go down the road?
Well, with an opportunity like that, I think, I think I could compete at a high level with anybody,
Sure.
Because outside of where I chose to rodeo most of my career, I went to big jackpot competitions and stuff where everybody from every association was there and stuff. And I fared pretty well at those. And so, most of my career was spent in the IPRA for a number of different reasons, but one of them was family, so that my wife and I could travel together and affordably and all that. And, then along came Garrett and we drug him around the country and all of that. But I think if I could have, went to the rodeos that I was going to anyway and nominate for a chance to go to the American to have a chance at $1 million, I think I would have been all about that. I don't know if I'd have won $1 million, but I'd have give him a try.
And 14, 15 grand to win a regional, for goodness sakes.
Sure.
Big money.
Yeah. It takes it not only takes a lot of rodeos usually to win that kind of money, to win $15,000, but also you're traveling to multiple places to try to win that $15,000, right? There's a nomination fee. So depending on the size of the rodeo and stuff, the nomination fee might be higher or lower, but you think about what gas and all those things cost now, fuel prices, and heaven forbid you got to get a hotel room or
eat on the road.
Or eat on the road. Even if it's another $500, where are you going to go to a rodeo to have a chance to win that kind of money for $500? And then when you get to Lexington, you're already paid up through the nomination process, right on through to Arlington. to run at $1 million.
Absolutely. Perfect. Future's bright for the IPRA. Can we say that?
Well, I certainly hope so and think so. There's always things that you want to improve. My goal has always been to make it better for our members and give them more opportunities, at more money and more accolades and prizes and all those things. So we'll continue to strive to do that. And I hope we're on the right track, and there's some good things in place, and we're gonna keep plugging forward.
I love it. And speaking of good things to happen, we're only a few minutes away from tonight's performance here in this great arena. So thank you for being on the show. Thank you for being on Beyond the Chutes, Dale.
Absolutely. I was good to be with you. And I haven't seen you for a while, and so it was good to catch up at breakfast this morning and get on here and do the podcast with you again.
Absolutely. We'll do this every year, okay? Let's just this is our third time, so It's becoming a tradition. Sam, any words?
Well, I'd like to thank Dale for coming on, and we enjoyed it, and the content we got was wonderful. So,
yeah.
Thank you for everybody that listening in, and Bon Festival.
Oh, you changed it up this time. I love it. All right, this is Doug.
I'm Dale.
And Sam.
See you next time. We hope you enjoyed our conversation with Dale Yerigan. He's so kind to come on the show and brings us up to speed on so many things that are going on. He's got so much history of the sport of rodeo and a deep passion for the sport. So thank you, Mr. Dale Yerigan, for being on our show. We're proud to be supported by Parasite System. Parasite is helping clinics catch problems early with fast, accurate diagnostics. Learn more at parasitesystem.com. We're also brought to you by Simcox & Company, a 4-generation barbershop in Cedar Falls, Iowa. Want to look sharp? Walk in and see Deb, Tom, Eli, or Troy. No appointment is needed. You can find them at Simcox & Company on Facebook.
Hey, Rodeo Road Warriors! Stan Cromlish here from the Wandering Gypsy RV Life Podcast. Ever had a trip go sideways, faster than a bronc out of the chute? Grab my book, Rolling Smooth, How to Enjoy the RV Life Without Losing Your Cool. Packed with real RV stories, hard-won lessons, and a few laughs at my expense. Listen on Audible. Snag a copy at WanderingGypsyRVLife.com and catch the Wandering Gypsy RV Life podcast for more wild tales from the road. Don't just ride, roll smooth.
And for music that travels well, stream Nicky McLeod's albums, Prepaid and Some Kind of Reckless. Available now wherever you find your music. And before we go, a special mention of Liesl Harris, This Ain't My Last Rodeo. Great short stories and memories told by one of the most beloved figures in rodeo history. Pick it up now on Amazon. And a new book is coming to Amazon this fall. It's called World Toughest Rodeo, How One Cowboy Blazed a Trail for Western Sports. It's going to be released November 11th, 2025 by W. Brand Publishing. It's an in-depth dive into how Steve Gander went from meager beginnings on a small family farm to building a brand that still rides strong 45 years later. A story of vision, grit, and the spirit of rodeo. This has been a BTC production. Until next time, thank you for listening.